Hello, I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, and I'm glad you're here. We're going to talk about toxic relationships tonight, as we usually do on Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And tonight is no exception. Today we're going to talk about what it feels like after you've been with a toxic person, maybe one or two toxic people, maybe 5 or 10. And then you have this unsettling feeling that your partner picker is off. And if you've had that situation in your life, then you will understand completely what I'm talking about. So welcome, and I'd love to invite you to say hello. Let me know that you're here and ready to be part of this conversation. Have you ever had the experience where you wonder if your partner picker is off? I know I have clients all over the world because I work through video conferencing, and sometimes we'll go through the whole process of them making their decision to leave, and then going through the court process, things start to settle down. They're co-parenting or they're on their own and they're creating a new life, and then they find they're scared. They're just afraid, and they're maybe a little paralytic, maybe a little frozen, definitely a little holding back, maybe you don't want to put a toe in the water, afraid of that. And then others of them jump right in, and then they say, oh my goodness, I should never have done that. I didn't know what was going on, and it didn't go very well. So hi, Megan, welcome tonight. So if you have had an experience or had the thought, maybe my partner picker is off, then this is going to be a great conversation tonight. For those of you who are just joining me, I just want to remind you that you can find out more about me at transformingrelationship.com. And I will just put that in the chat here so that you can see it as I say it. So transformingrelationship.com, that will help you find me, learn more about my work, or you want to listen to my podcast, Emotional Savvy, or Save Your Sanity, Help for Toxic Relationships. You'll find it all on my website. So go to transformingrelationship.com. So, hello, Eddie. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you think it's a great topic. I think it's a worthwhile topic for sure, because it just comes up so frequently. Like, people are just stuck. They feel like they're with somebody who seems pleasant, and then the red flags start to show up and they go running way back, and they don't know if they can calibrate what this red flag behavior is, or am I being overly sensitive, or am I tarring everybody with the brush of my previous relationship? And it gets very, very, very confusing. So tonight, I hope that we have a very interactive session, because I want to know what your questions are. So please feel free to put your questions in right up the front so that I can respond to them, or maybe a little description of an experience that you had and it caused you to question whether your partner picker was off. Now, I'll just say basically that if you had a hijackal parent, and hijackal is my term. I created that term because too many people, in my opinion, were going to the internet and they were putting in traits and patterns, cycles and symptoms of the person they had in mind that was relentlessly difficult, and they were forgetting that the internet and Google or whatever search engine you're using is not a mental health professional. It is an index. And so it would spit back psychological terms, and then people would use them as though they were a diagnosis. And I don't think that's healthy. I think what's healthy is to understand what the patterns, traits, and cycles of people are, regardless of their diagnosis. If they have the patterns, traits, and cycles that I offer, so that you can understand hijackals, that's what you want to talk about, because that's what you have to respond to. That's what you have to deal with. That's what you're going to have to co-parent with. That's what you're going to have to make decisions about. And so I wanted you to have that term. So hijackals, by my definition, are people who hijack relationships for their own purposes, and then they relentlessly scavenge them for power, status, and control. Ever been in a relationship where the other person was scavenging it for power, status, and control in large and small ways? If you have been, then you'll know for sure what I'm talking about. Hello, Leni. Welcome tonight. So, if you have had a hijackal parent, you are going to not feel as ready to see those red flags as a person who didn't have a hijackal parent. And the reason for that is that you have been raised in a situation that was comfortably uncomfortable, and you maybe didn't understand everything that was going on. You might now. But when you were small and your brain development was just beginning, so many things were put into you. It was like you got a software program that had a little bit of malware and a few viruses set to go off and maybe a Trojan horse or two. And so you were already comfortably uncomfortable and ready to become what I call hijackal bait. It's like hijackals can just sense that you're a person that they can attract, manipulate, charm, delight, and then use and abuse and discard and devalue. Sound at all familiar? So for many of the people who listen to my podcast, Save Your Sanity, Help for Toxic Relationships is way too familiar. And I know for me it's very familiar because I was raised by two hijackals. So of course I married hijackals. And of course I had to come to my senses and make a decision of, did I want that model for my children? Did I want to live with that myself a moment longer? And the answer was no. And so then I had the co-parenting experience. And yes, I attracted other hijackals along the way. And that's what happens. That's the cycle. That's the way it works. Now, if you didn't have a hijackal parent and you attracted a hijackal, then you're probably a healthy, empathic person who really, really cares and believes that if you were more loving, if you were more kind, if you were more nurturing, if you were more caring, if you compromised, you collaborated, you gave in, all of those things just a little bit more, then that hijackal would believe that they were lovable and they would relax and they wouldn't treat you that way. Well, that didn't happen, did it? No, it didn't get better. Yeah, every now and again it did for a hot minute when they wanted something or they were afraid that they were going to lose you. But overall, it didn't get better. It didn't improve. And in most cases, it got worse. So when you've had those experiences in your life and then you find yourself single and ready to go out and hopefully find someone that could engage with you in a rich, emotionally intimate relationship, there's some fear. And rightly so. Do I know how to calibrate this? Do I know what a red flag is? If I see it, will I recognize it early enough? Big questions. So Eddie asked, hijackals, is it also gaslighting? Of course, hijackals are masters at gaslighting. And if you're not familiar with the term gaslighting, it means that another person, a hijackal, they want to take over control by defining your reality. So they'll tell you what you think, what you feel, what you've seen, what you've not seen, what you want, what you don't want. They will define your reality for you and tell you that they are right about you. And so they cause you to question your sanity. And that's what we call gaslighting. And of course, I've done a whole show on sneaky gaslighting, so you can just look at the channel here and watch that video some other time. So, yes, Eddie said, I just joined your mailing list. I hope you all do. I hope you also subscribe here. Just down below where it says subscribe, and hit the bell so that you'll get a notification every time there's a new video. So let's talk about this together. Has anybody have a little bit of fear that their partner picker is off? Or do you have an experience that you've had where you went on a date after leaving a hijackal situation and you felt a little concerned or fearful or befuddled as, is that a hijackal signal? Is that a red flag? Or am I overly sensitive? Am I overly concerned? Those are big questions, really big questions. Hi, Bobby. Bobby says lots. Lots of questions, lots of concerns, lots of what, Bobby? I think that it's extremely common to have concerns for sure. So Bobby asks, how do I know I'm ready to date again? Oh, what a great question. Well, the number one thing is, have you done your own work? Now, that's not because that's the work that I do. Because it's the work I do, I know how valuable it is that after you have left a hijackal relationship, that you get some outside help to look through what happened, why did it happen, what could you now learn from that, glean from that, what do you need to change, do you need to have a new filter that allows you to see these things. Can you allow yourself to stop beating yourself up for being in a bad relationship? I mean, you have work to do to be ready to start a new relationship. So how do you know you're ready to date again? You've done your work. You're no longer furious. You don't turn red in the face and smoke comes out your ears when you think of your hijackal ex. You can function in the world without telling everybody about that hijackal ex and how awful it was and how that person did you wrong. You've come to where you hardly think about that person. Maybe something reminds you, but you're not thinking about them on a daily or weekly basis. And that you feel like, okay, I am now living from my vision for my life, my values, my beliefs. I am the author of my life, and I am comfortable with that, and I am consciously doing that. When you can say those things to yourself, then you may be ready to date. And if anybody has anything else they'd like to add that they've experienced to learn when they were ready to date, for sure, put it in here. So Leni says, yes, sure do. When I was in Al-Anon, the wisdom was actually that their pickers were off to be in relationships with alcoholics. Yes, exactly. It's the same thing. Our pickers are off to be in relationship with alcoholics, and our pickers are off to be in relationship with hijackals. And, you know, the kinds of things, the terms that people use, the diagnoses we're talking about, are people who have patterns, traits, and cycles of narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy, any kind of antisocial behavior, histrionics, those are the drama kings and queens of the world, borderlines who will rage and then want you back and, push, pull, push, pull. So anybody who falls into the category of a hijackal, yes, you are going to want to become very, very clear and very centered and feel very confident that you can, in fact, see a hijackal coming. Because up until that point, you have been hijackal bait, and you don't want to be hijackal bait again. So that's how you know you're ready to date. And Leni, I absolutely agree. It's similar to the attraction of getting into the alcoholic loop too. Hi, Devin. Lots of hijackals. Yes, yes, there are lots. And unfortunately, the research shows that there are growing numbers of them. Now, of course, hijackals have children, so we're going to see at least, generally 50% of those children have hijackal tendencies, but we're experiencing it more and more because we have more and more models in our world of that kind of behavior, and these people are bullies. We have a lot of models of bullies right now in the world, and are getting a lot of attention in many countries. Now, Lini said, but I feel that's really not fair because of my case. I was extremely love bombed and didn't see the red flags clearly until the devalue and discard. I think that's true for most people. I really do, Lini. We want to be loved. We want to believe people are wonderful. We want to believe people see us and they value us and they want to do nice things for us and that they could love us. We absolutely want that, and it's an appropriate expectation. One big thing about hijackals, and looking back, I think any of you that have been with one will know, they were in a rush, weren't they? They were in a rush. They said things like, oh, I know we've just met, but I know we're going to be together forever. Or I love you so much already. Or let's move in together. There's that saying, and you see it occasionally on Facebook. There's nobody who can fall in love faster than a narcissist who just lost their job. Right? So, yes, they can put on such a great show, and it is natural to respond to them in a healthy way and to think that this is wonderful, and yes, this person values me, but they're always in this rush. They want to move in, they want to marry, they want to get pregnant, they want to do these things that would cause you to stay with them longer once they no longer are in their chameleon stage of love bombing. And so it's not unusual at all, Leni, that you would have that. Megan says, I need to learn a new skill set to have a successful future relationship. Yes, we all do. And we all did. And Devin says, right, I don't care. I'm not sure what you're responding to with the I don't care, but it's good to get to a place of knowing yourself very, very well, what you want and what you don't want, what matters to you and what doesn't matter to you. Megan says, only one thing I learned so far is not to pick someone I need to rescue. Yay! Good. Anybody who needs rescuing should, perhaps go get themselves a life preserver. They should go and do their own work. You're not there to pick them up and save them or set them straight. There's a wonderful work by a man called Parker Palmer, if you ever want to read something like that. And he says, we're just not here to rescue people or set them straight. That's not our job. And so good for you. I'm glad that you understand that if somebody needs rescuing, don't let that pull your heart out of your chest and go, oh, what can I give you? And how much more do you need? Because that is something they love to see. They are so excited to see that. Got a live one here. Let's see what I can do. And then they play the yo-yo game. Come closer, no, stay away. Come closer, stay away. And you get all confused in that. Devin says, I don't care about the hijackal. Right. Good. That's a good place to be, not caring about the hijackal anymore, because they consumed already a whole lot of your life energy. So let's not give them any more. Leni says, after divorce, I quit going. I feel they were trying to make me understand the other person with the problem more than taking care of myself. Oh, you've got so wise in this process, Leni. Yes. It isn't about the other person. We need to understand the patterns, traits, and cycles of hijackals, but we don't need to lean in and learn their life story. We don't. And we don't need to be overly compassionate. And I mean that. Compassion is great, but have compassion for yourself too. And that's where we make the mistake so frequently. We don't have equal compassion for ourselves as we have for the hijackal. So we start leaning in and giving a little more. And pretty soon we start to resent it. And when we resent it, we beat ourselves up for not being a nice person because we're resenting giving to this person in need, right? You know things about that cycle. And the hijackal is just going, come here, right? And they're thrilled. They got a live one there. Hi, Alchemy. Haven't seen you for a bit. I know that my picker is off. I have never been married. I would date guys and not realize that they'd lied to me, or they would throw a temper tantrum or some other jerk move 6 months into it. So you've had likely a series of hijackals, because 6 months is kind of a point that that's about all they can do. Really, and if they get into the wedding planning stage, they might be able to go a little longer. Yes, I've had a couple of people in my practice, and I've had a lot because I've been doing this for a very long time. I've had a couple whose person was able to hang in for 4 or 5 years, but they were what we call covert hijackals. They were the people who were always playing the victim, so sad, nobody ever let me get anywhere, my life is terrible, nobody lets me move forward. They're always talking about themselves, but they're talking about themselves in those terms. So they keep trying to guilt their partners into taking care of them. So those ones last a little longer until the partner becomes so tired of hearing all of that that they just can't do it anymore. So, yes, when you realize that they lie to you or they throw a temper tantrum. Now, aren't hijackals just the greatest at throwing temper tantrums? And there's a reason for that. In yesterday's podcast on Save Your Sanity, I put up something that everybody really needs to understand about themselves and other humans. And it's called unattachable. Why you can't change a hijackal. And it's about what happened to them when they were very young. And we need to know what happened to us when we were very young too. And so they get stopped in their growth at certain periods in their life because of things that have happened to them. And so that's why we see the tantrums, because they kind of get stuck somewhere between 3 and 7 in the way that they throw a tantrum. Haven't you ever looked at a hijackal throwing a tantrum, and in your head you're going, what are you, 6? Right? And so they get stuck there. So absolutely, alchemy, that's what they do. They lie, they get angry, they pout, they do the silent treatment, they throw a temper tantrum. And they're not really good at being able to sustain any kind of healthy or appearing healthy or at least feeling good relationship for any length of time at all. So Eddie asks, what does the research say? Who have the worst partner pickers, men or women? Oh, sorry, no difference. There's an equal number of male and female hijackals, so therefore there's an equal number of male and female people with poor partner pickers. So it's about our life that's gone on before we meet the hijackal that helps us understand ourselves in the aftermath as to why this hijackal was acceptable to me in any way. So the research is really quite equal. All right. So Leni says, I'm feeling the same, Bobby. Before yours in October, since the last discard, and 3.5 years since the divorce. I've had one date, but I did see the red flags right away. Yeah, good for you. Did it scare you, though? Did it scare you off that you were still in a situation where you were attracting them? Well, don't be afraid, because if you see it early on in the first 3 dates, yay! Yay, that's great. That means that you are understanding the dynamic. You get the feeling, you listen to your body. You've ripped off those rose-colored glasses so that you can see red flags. So you're in good shape. So don't be afraid. If you can see them early, trust yourself. You'll see them. You'll have a little internal giggle and you'll say, I think I have to feed my cat. I'm out of here. So don't be concerned about that. Don't be afraid. It sounds like you already understand how to get out of there. So that's good. And Bobby said, I meant for years in October since the discard, the final one. Okay, yes. And Bobby said, I see red flags everywhere. I think I'm overanalyzing everyone in my life. Well, we do that. That's a safety measure. I have been burned and I am on the alert for fire everywhere. If it looks like fire, if it's even close to matches, if there's some gasoline over there, I'm already on red alert. No, 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 no. And so, of course, you're going to do that. But that's why I say you need to get some help. You need to get the help from outside you, to ask you the questions that will allow you to understand why this happened to you and to make sure that you understand how to never let it happen again. anytime you want to work with me, everybody, I have a one-time full hour session for only $97 for new clients. And you just go to beaclient.com. Beaclient.com. And we can talk about it. Find out what your next best steps are. What are the pieces that you most need? Because we do get in that state that Bobby's writing about, that we begin to see red flags everywhere. And we can scare ourselves. We can scare ourselves into that paralysis that allows us to say, I think I'll stay home. And that's when we need help, because you don't want to stay home for the rest of your life. And there are wonderful people out there. And one of the things you want to do when you get some help is to learn, what are the parameters of a healthy relationship? How do you know what they are? And then how do you know what the best relationship for you personally, not everybody, for you personally is? How do you know what they are? You have to figure them out. It's not, well, y'all come and let me just decide on the spot. I think you have to be really, really clear that this is what I want. This is how I want to feel in a relationship. These are my values, and I want most of them matched by a partner. This is my vision for the life that I want, and I would like to share that with a partner, and I would like someone who has a vision that's similar. And these are my beliefs about life and money and spiritual things and families and safety, and my beliefs about all kinds of things. You have to deeply look at those and say which ones are very important to me that I would find in a partner. And then, what do I want to do in life now? What are my next best steps? What's my next challenge? What's my new purpose? What am I going to do if I have children? Do I want more children? What am I going to do after the children have gone? You need to have some clarity, and that's really important. So Megan asks, are there any type of test to find a hijackal early in the relationship, like saying no to something they want? Well, you're the second person to ask me that question today, and I have created a checklist about how to figure out if somebody is a hijackal, but I have been reluctant to put it out there because I don't want people to just get into the black and white thinking. So that's why I wrote the ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal. It's free, and you can get it at hijackals.com. And that's this. You can just go to that link and get it and read it. And you'll be able to tell pretty quickly if those patterns, traits, and cycles are showing up on a regular basis, or even too often at all. Then you will clearly have an understanding. And I may continue doing this test. I just don't want people putting people into pigeonholes from a test when I don't really understand what their particular situation is. So a big decision I have to make. So Megan, the answer is there may be, other people may have them. I don't have one at the moment, but do get the free ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal. And it'll give you some hooks to hang on. And also I have a course called Seeing the Cycles. And when you go to transformingrelationship.com and you click on the store, you can see all the stuff. And if you want to have an in-depth look and you really want to understand the cycles that these people go through and the traits that they go through in depth, it's 13 videos and worksheets and journal sheets and all kinds of things in the Seeing the Cycle, so that you can have an in-depth look at all of that. And if that doesn't float your boat, then you can go to my YouTube channel, which you're on, of course, and look for a whole lot of videos on how to recognize hijackal traits, and you can watch those. So you can quite quickly find out what's what. But let's get back to your picker. Do you know yourself really well? Because for many people, they are spending their life, they're all engaged in life. It's like they're leaning in and they're living other people's lives, and they want people to like them, and they want to engage with other people, and they may have a titch too much people pleaser in them. And, I find that sometimes when a client says, well, I've written this profile for this dating site, what do you think? And I read the profile, and it's all about trying to please somebody reading it. And I say to them, I would like you to write this from a different point of view, that you tell people how they could please you, what would be attractive to you, as opposed to you trying to make yourself attractive to them. Because if no one is willing to work at it, and there's a lot of that going on in the dating world right now, just think about the whole Bumble thing. They're not willing to work at it. It's some numbers game. Swipe left, swipe left, swipe left, swipe right. Do that 4 times a night and then see whether or not you feel inclined to contact the person. It's all very superficial. Nalini says, yes, Megan, saying no is a huge test. Yes. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that. It brought on the rage and the disappearing act. Yes, a hijackal hates to be told no. In any form, they hate to be told, no, you're wrong. No, I disagree with you. No, I won't do that. No, that's not okay with me. Because they are very, very young in their emotional growth. And 3-year-old, 2-year-olds, what do they say? No, no. And then if they get beyond that, they don't like it when you say no to them. And so they get the tantrums. Well, we kind of got stuck there in the hijackal development. And so they don't like hearing no. And then they try to cajole you if they're in a good love bombing mood. And if they're not, then they just simply make you wrong or dismiss you or walk out or give you the silent treatment. But they don't like being told no because they feel a disproportionate sense of entitlement to get what they want. This is all part of their development that I talked about in yesterday's edition of Save Your Sanity. The unattachable was the topic. Because they got all that put into them when they were young, and so they've spent a lot of time working from that premise. So by the time they meet you, they're expecting you to go yes, 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 and how fast and how and they do not like to hear no. So that's certainly something that can be a big red flag for you. If someone says to you, well, I'd really like to do this on Saturday night, would you? And your answer is, no, actually, I'm busy, or I wouldn't like to do that. And they immediately start making you wrong or trying to convince you and do not listen to you. And do not even ask you if it would be better to do it another day or whatever. They're so bent on having things their way that can happen. So how do you get this picker to be better? Well, first of all, you get clear. Do you feel clear? Do you feel you know yourself well? What's okay with you, what's not okay? Because one of the things you're absolutely going to need if you're going to be having a healthy relationship is the ability to understand where you need boundaries, how to set them, how to maintain them, and how to make sure they're non-negotiable. So you really need to know yourself well. And in order to be a good partner picker, first of all, you need to know yourself and know what you are looking for. Now, I have a friend who, she's been single for a very, very long time. And she talks to me frequently about it. She's kind of become an expert on dating sites, I must say. She's a good resource for asking about those kind of things. But until the last couple of years, she had been looking really, really purposefully in a way that she was even investing in high-level matchmakers. And so I would say to her, well, how did the date go? And invariably she would say to me, I don't know why I pay that matchmaking service so much, because I told him if they're not 6 feet tall, I'm not interested. And the guy was maybe 5'10" and a half. So it just turned me off. So I'm not talking about that kind of thing. I finally said to her after I'd heard that story too many times, I said, I don't think you really want a partner in your life. She said, why? I'm dating all the time. I said, because it's not about how tall they are. Yes, you may prefer someone who's 6 feet tall. But a person who's 5'10" and a half is still way taller than you are. So when you use height as the first criteria about whether a person is acceptable or not, you are in a very shallow pool. So one of the things that we have to do is know what the important criteria are. What's in this person's heart and what's in this person's mind, and you want to be looking at that, and you want to know, what do you want to find in there? Because that will help your picker. You know, if someone talks about things that are of interest to you, or talks about things that you want to learn about, and you find that fascinating, that's you knowing yourself well enough. And that's important. And then if they have something entirely different to teach you or share with you or whatever, you may say, wow, that's cool too. But you find somebody who's totally self-centered and it's my way or the highway, and this is what I've always done, and these are the things that I have to have. And if I don't have them, I just keep plowing on through. And if anybody gets in my way, no, we don't want one of those, do we? So Megan asks, how long should we wait before we let a romantic partner know of our deal breakers, our dreams and desires, so as to not allow them to pretend to be what we want? Whoa, good question. So let me take it apart. How long should we wait before letting a romantic partner know of our deal breakers? Well, let me say, first of all, don't jump into a relationship and talk about your previous relationships. Don't tell people what you don't want. When you are in a new situation, you're learning about a new person, you want to be watching and listening. And you don't want to be giving a whole lot of background. And if they want to complain about their former partners and all of that, big red flag, right? I mean, I can think of at least 20 clients who have told me that the person, the hijackal that they ended up divorcing, started the relationship by oversharing about, well, every woman I've ever been with is crazy. Now, that should be a big red flag, because who is the common person in all those relationships? And yet the people were saying, well, I've only ever attracted crazy people. Ooh, big red flag, right? So first of all, don't be talking about your previous relationships until later on. And the question Megan asked is, before we let a romantic partner know of our deal breakers, well, get to know somebody a little first. You're not shopping for a car. It doesn't have to have a V8 engine, and it doesn't have to have very, very, very specific things, and they all have to be on the car. You're engaging in learning about somebody's journey through life. So I wouldn't start talking about deal breakers within the first 2 or 3 days. I would be learning about the other human as much as I possibly could. That would be my advice to you. And then maybe you introduce it not in terms of a deal breaker. I have no idea how you were thinking of introducing it, Megan, but not as a deal breaker, but being able to simply have it as, one thing I've learned that doesn't work for me is this. How about you? And so it's, you don't have to say, well, this is, if you give me the wrong answer, we're out of here. But that you begin to introduce the ideas that way, and you see how they respond. And you watch them carefully. Did they panic at that moment? Did they lean in? Did they ask you a question? Did they become defensive? What did they do? And that way you can begin to gauge whether this person has the potential of entering into good conversation with you at length. And that's really important. But if you do have deal breakers, absolutely. Like, one thing for me, and of course, if I were out dating, I would put this in a profile, that no smokers need apply. Absolutely. I don't care how wonderful you are. We could have a relationship on the telephone, perhaps, but I will not be in the presence of smoke. Right? So it's a deal breaker. So I would have known that before I met somebody. So if you haven't done a little pre-sort, then maybe your profile isn't good enough, or you didn't ask the right questions before you went out. But to answer your question directly, listen, watch, take in. Remember to whip off those rose-colored glasses. Take in what this person is saying and doing, and how they're coming across, and how they're listening, and what they're asking you. And then you will know when it's time to say, one of the things that doesn't work for me is this. How about you? And then you can have a conversation about that and see how they entertain that conversation. And then you said, when do you tell them your dreams and desires? Well, that's a good starting point, to be able to talk to somebody about, what I'd like to achieve or create in this life is this. How about you? Then you get a sense of directionality. So that's a much better earlier conversation than the deal breaker conversation. Does that make sense to you? I hope so. Because you're bringing up a good point, Megan, when you say, I don't want to allow them to pretend to be what I want. And a hijacker wants to do that. They want to lean in and listen to you, and then they want to show you that they are everything you ever wanted and more, and that they read you like a book. That's what they want you to believe. So then you need to stay in a relationship long enough and watch carefully enough to see if what they're pretending to be what you want is starting to get a bit ragged and shredding around the edges. And that becomes a very important time too. And Devin agrees, watching and listening, yes. So many times we want to tell. We want to jump in and talk, and we want to say, oh, let me tell you all about me. Yeah, not so much. I mean, you want to give and take. You want to be in the flow of conversation, but you want to be the one who talks a little more generally and asks more questions than the other one, if you possibly can manage that, because you are the one who is doing the job interview, right? The other person may be doing it too, but this is you auditioning someone for the part of romantic partner, and you are responsible for that audition. You need to have it go on long enough that you have satisfactory sense of what this person is capable of, what they do, who they are, what they value. And don't get swept off your feet because somebody loves you, somebody likes you, somebody says wonderful things to you. Yeah, just hold back and say, well, that's nice, and let me watch for a bit. Let me see. Because, the number one thing that I can ever teach anyone, thing that I think is the most important thing I ever teach anyone, is this: the truth is what you do. The truth is what you do. So always believe behavior, because a person's behavior is their belief. They actually do what they believe, and they may say something very different, right? Have you had experience with that? And you so want to believe their words because they're just right. But you have to become your own best friend and only believe their behavior, so that if their behavior aligns with their words, you can go, yes, that's a match. Now I can believe it. But until that time, you only believe the behavior, not the words. Now, I just want to say something about this when you're in the dating world, because I've started using a word that may sound a little bit strange, but I think it's an important concept and it helps understand this. If you go out with somebody and they start to text you frequently, not to ask, not, what are you doing? How are you? Where have you been? All that kind of thing. And it starts to get annoying. This is what I'm calling surveillance. And so often we'll talk about surveillance in, terms of cameras and GPS trackers and things on cars and phones. And that's certainly something that a hijacker will do. But there is another kind of surveillance, and it's done usually by text and telephone. And if a hijacker is present, they want to know where you are, what you're doing, when you'll be where you're going to be, why weren't you where you said you were, why are you 10 minutes late? And then when you get into a relationship with them, you hear things like, I know it's only 12 minutes for you to get home from work, and it has been 18 minutes. Why are you late? There is this constant surveillance of your life, constant surveillance of your time. And if that starts to show up early in the relationship and you think, oh, isn't that nice? They're interested. But you start to feel a little bit stalked. You start to feel like this person wants to know things, and then they get a little annoyed. And you didn't call me in time, and you didn't text me back in time, like you don't have a life. Watch for that, because you are responsible for your partner picking mechanism. And if they're showing you things like this, you are responsible for picking them up. So Eddie says, my first time here, and I find you to be kind, caring, and insightful. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're here and that you've joined us. And Megan says, good to know. Yes, so important. So, when we come to the 45-minute moment in our live stream on Monday nights, that's the time I say, put your questions, any questions you like, into the chat. So if you have a burning question, it doesn't have to do with partner pickers, but if you have a burning question tonight, put it in there so that if I can answer it, I certainly will. So I hope this is beginning to paint a picture for you. There's a reason that you attracted a hijackal and that you hung in with a hijackal. And you need help to see that. So if you want my help, as I said, go to beaclient.com. But you need help. You need to do that work. You need to have figured that out, and you need to have new strategies, new view, a new frame to work from so that that won't happen again. You also need to clearly see the patterns, traits, and cycles of hijackals. So when they show up, you will go, that's a hijackal behavior. Let me see if it's related to any other ones. And so you will just notice. That's all. You don't have to get emotionally involved with the information. You will just notice, and that will help you. And then when you know your values, and you know your vision for your life, and you know your beliefs, and you know the next things you'd like to do in life, or your next mission or challenge or purpose or goal, and you can express that, then you can engage someone in your life at this stage in your life, and that's very important. So Eddie asked a question, a very general question. He says, do we currently live in a narcissistic culture? Well, it depends which country you're living in, of course. But we don't live in a narcissistic personality disordered culture. But unfortunately and sadly, the number of people who have narcissistic traits, psychopathic, sociopathic, borderline traits, is actually showing a rise, as I mentioned earlier. And we have gone through an age of entitlement where that was unfortunate. There was a lot of money around, and we gave our kids everything, and maybe we didn't instill in them the need to be respectful and work for what they needed, and do without occasionally, and understand that they don't deserve things just for breathing. So we have had a little bit of cultural shift in the fact that we have had more entitlement. And sometimes we have models in our community or in our country that demonstrates that entitlement, that bullying, that putting down. One of the things that we often see is a hijackal demands loyalty. They absolutely demand it. They use the word a lot, and yet they're loyal to nobody. They'll demand loyalty from someone, and then they'll discard them. And that's a big red flag. So my answer to you, Eddie, is yes, we do have more narcissistic tendencies in our culture than we have before. There are books about the narcissism epidemic, and so it is a problem. But what's most important is that we learn to recognize it so that we can move away from it and not participate with it and not get ensnared by one. That's why my book, Escaping the Hijackal Trap, is important. because if you've been trapped in a hijackal relationship, you need to understand how to escape. And all my books, I've written 16 books, and I think 9 of them are still available on Amazon. And again, don't forget the free ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal, at hijackals.com. So the 80s, greed is good, baby boomer generation. Yeah, they raised children that that had a certain entitlement, and there was some of it certainly in those kids. So when we talk about millennials, we're talking about kids who came of age at 2000. So yes, and that, there's that old joke about the HR person who was interviewing a young man who just got out of college and it was his first job, and the fellow was saying, well, what's the salary and what do I get and all these things. And so the HR person leaned in and said, well, how about 100,000 a year? And the kid said, oh, yeah. And how about a company car? Maybe something nice like an Escalade or something. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. And how about 6 weeks of paid vacation a year? And the kid just can't contain himself. And he says, wow, are you kidding? And the HR person said, yes, but you started it, right? That's the age of entitlement. That's somewhere that in that entitlement may be a basis of narcissism. So that's very important. So any other questions tonight? Anything else that you would like to ask me on any topic at all? We still have some time to go, and I'd be happy to answer that. Okay, Bobby says, does a hijackal know what they're doing and the many ways they use manipulation and passive aggressiveness, or are they oblivious? My partner thought things were fine in a relationship. All hijackals think things are fine, because hijackals will never, ever be at fault for anything. So everything is always fine until it's your fault. And they will always make everything your fault. So does a hijackal know what they're doing? Well, this is a big question of debate. They don't sit around and decide to be the way they are in their most intrinsic nature, but they do decide where to apply their behaviors and where not to, and when. So I often will say a hijackal creates a public picture of perfection, and at home creates a private place of pain, which demonstrates to us, I think to all of us, that they choose behaviors to create that public picture of perfection that they don't choose to use in the private place of pain. So they do know what their environment will sustain and how to get what they want. And they know that some behaviors do not belong in the workplace, or some behaviors do not belong in church. And there are a lot of hijackals in church. That's a whole other subject. And then yet at home, they will behave so badly. So their behavior they definitely make behavior choices. But the conscious decision to do someone in is on the extreme end of hijackals. And that usually involves a little more darkness, where we get closer to, if we were having a disorder diagnosis, getting close to someone who's psychopathic as opposed to narcissistic. They are very conniving, they're very planning, they're very malicious. And then we have something that's called the dark triad, which is people who are narcissistic, Machiavellian, and psychopathic, and they're definitely planning what they're doing and enjoying every moment of it, and enjoying covering it up and pretending they didn't do it. So Eddie says, so hijackals have a delusional disorder. Well, they're delusional in their sense of grandiosity, that they believe that what they want is the thing that's most important. Who they are is most important. The direction they want to go is most important. They believe that they're the smartest person in every room, and if you suggest for one moment that they're not, they'll jump all over you and make your life miserable and deny anything that they have ever done that shows they're less than the brightest person in the room. So this happens a lot So I don't know that we would say it's a delusional disorder, but I get the gist of your question. They do have a delusion that they are, in fact, very, very, very important, and that they should be adored and they should be given everything that they want and that they deserve it. And so if that's your idea of delusional, you could jump in on that one. So as I said, I've written a whole lot about hijackals, and I've done a lot of videos on hijackals. So you want to learn more about the traits, just go through the videos. And also go over to the podcast Save Your Sanity. That's a podcast where I rarely have guests, so I'm talking about particular topics. And I want to direct your attention again, one more time in this live stream, to yesterday's Save Your Sanity show. And it's called Unattachable and Why You Can't Change a Hijackal. And that's very important for you to know, even if you're a long way away from a hijackal in your life. It's important for you to understand that dynamic. It will really help you. So I hope tonight has been helpful to you. I hope that you've learned a few things, you've reflected on a few things, and you understand what the first steps are to increasing your ability to be a successful partner picker. Oh, thank you, Bobby. She says, thank you for all you do. I love your podcasts and videos. Great. You know, I do this work because I've lived this work. I was both my parents were hijackals. I naturally had hijackal partners. I married a hijackal. I had children. I co-parented with them, and there was very little help. When I went for help, people did not understand. They thought something was wrong with me, and that happens way too often. So it really floats my boat and flips my skirt to get up every morning and help people understand the dynamics of what's going on and to understand hijackals. And so I'm very happy to do this work, and I'm glad that you find it valuable. Alchemy says, because my last boyfriend lied about who he was, we broke up. And that was maybe my last chance to have children, and that's what really hurts. That is sad, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. Because the whole idea of lying to get what they want is a hallmark of a hijackal. And that's really sad. And you know, you said it may be your last chance to have children. I don't think it's ever too late to adopt a child who really needs a mommy. So maybe you can extend that time frame. Eddie says, thank you. This was great, and thanks for answering my many questions. I find this subject interesting. It explains a lot about human behavior. Yes, and the more we understand about the inner workings of human behavior, the more we'll understand ourselves, and the more we understand ourselves and other people, we have a greater opportunity for creating the deep, rich emotional intimacy that we crave. So you're so welcome, Megan. And it's every Monday night that I'm here. Now, next Monday, after I've just said that, next Monday, watch for it. You know, I may make it and I may not, because I'm going to be speaking at a conference. I'm going to do my very best to be here. So those things will happen unless something absolutely remarkable happens. And otherwise, I will be here and we'll have a new topic. But if you subscribed, you will get notices. And if you follow my Facebook group, you just go to not my group, my page, facebook.com/relationshiphelpdoctor. I always publish on there what I'm up to and what's going to happen and what's happening. So Eddie said your work helps one and avoid a lot of pain and heartbreak. I hope so. And drama. Yes, and drama. We do not need any more drama in life. Absolutely and for sure. So I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, the Relationship Help Doctor. I'm thrilled that you were with me. Please invite your friends to join me. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell down below so that you'll know when I put up new videos and when there's about to be a new live stream. So in the meantime, take really good care of yourself. Do you know why? It's because you matter, and demonstrate that to yourself. Good night.